Welcome to the Followup podcast. My name is Hayden. I am the worship director here at Arbor Church, and today I am joined by Alison, our community care pastor, and Ryan Plants, our lead pastor and speaker from Sunday. So, I usually say if you weren't here, but it looked like everyone was here on Sunday. So
we were all here.
Yeah,
We were here.
Yes.
most people were here on Sunday, but there was obviously some people that probably were on the road or doing other things.
Sure.
So, if you weren't there, Ryan, could you just give like a quick summation? What was your message about?
Yeah. So for me personally, over the last 3 months, it's been a season filled with uncertainty. We came and visited Arbor in April and got to meet all of you and hear Arbor's story, and you got to hear my story, and that all went pretty well. I would actually say it went really well because here we are now, right? But in the moment, you're wondering like, did they like me? Because I liked them, and I hope they, like me enough to want me to come out there and be their pastor. And so there's uncertainty around that. And then I got the call to be the pastor here. And so you do that, and then you face all the uncertainty of telling the people that you've been doing life with for multiple years that you're going to be leaving, and then you have the whole house selling situation. And so there's a lot of uncertainty around that. And we have 3 children. And so them navigating, kind of picking up and uprooting from the place where they've lived for the last 7 years.
Totally.
And so that's a majority of all of their lives. A lot of uncertainty for them. And then moving into a new area, looking for a home, starting a new job, working with a new team. So much uncertainty. And so the reason I bring up that whole past story is because I know that Arbor has also had a lot of uncertainty over the last 2 years as to what this church would look like, and would we make it through this season, and not just with COVID, but with everything that has unfolded over the last 2 years at this church. And so as I had been spending time praying about this season and this church and my role in this church, and just asking the Lord, where do we start? Right? It's a daunting thing to think about. Where do we start?
Right.
Because you have the whole Bible in front of you, and you're like, I can preach from any of it now. And I really wish I could remember when I came across that passage in 2 Corinthians from Paul. I don't remember when and how. I wasn't reading through 2 Corinthians. I've basically only been reading through the Psalms for the last year and a half. But I somehow came across this passage, and it just seemed to so perfectly sum up what it's like for a pastor and his flock to be going through an uncertain circumstance brought about through a season of adversity, and how we absolutely hate that, right? It's the last thing we want. We crave certainty. And I think that's a eternal craving. I think we'll have some sense of peace and certainty in heaven. But on this side of eternity, we don't have that. And I think we long for that.
I think one thing that's interesting about that, or there's 2 things actually I find fascinating about the subject that you and the Holy Spirit chose. One, I love that you started your tenure here by admitting that there's uncertainty, not just in the human condition, but in your life specifically. And addressing that felt really humble to me, because you're admitting to all of us that you don't have answers for every step along the way. And even as our new pastor, there's still some uncertainty that we're working through as a flock. So I love that felt authentic and human and real and all that kind of stuff, which is great. And what was my second point? I liked a couple things about it, but I think that's the overwhelming thing that, I know. Because it's a universal condition that we're going to experience so many times in our life in so many ways. We as a staff have heard feedback on your sermon, and so many people have said to us, I felt like that sermon was written for me. And their circumstances are all really different. Every person who has said that, they're different ages, different genders, different points along the way, and yet it was so incredibly relatable. So I just love that.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing about the way God works on this side of eternity, is even though we all experience this very universal feeling as human beings on this side of eternity in the fall, God, in his power and in his providence, can continue to use that in such a way where he uses it for our good, for his glory. He shapes us through it, and it doesn't have to be wasted. The
Right.
uncertainty doesn't have to be wasted, and I think there's multiple ways we can waste it. And we can waste it by neglecting it. We can waste it by trying to control it ourselves. And God, in that passage, says, no, you encounter this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You encounter hardship. We encounter trials so that we would not place our dependence in ourselves, but in God. Because I think that's where I think in heaven, in the new kingdom, when it's fully, finally present, that's why we'll have that certainty. Because that broken part of us that refuses to place our dependence in the King will now finally fully be fixed so we can put our dependence in the King. That's where that certainty will finally, I think, come from.
You had said that we seek comfort and control in uncertain times. And it's along with that, placing our comfort, looking for our comfort and allowing God to control the thing is also how we can manage uncertainty on this side of heaven. So, I felt like you just nailed that, because that's relatable, right? Every time we have uncertainty, we reach for things that numb us or comfort us, distract us, or we go into micromanaging the thing, right? And both completely unhealthy responses.
Yeah, completely unhealthy. And that's why you see there at the beginning of verse 11, Paul says, as you join us in prayer. Like that's the manifestation of trust. And I had just been reading this book by Eugene Peterson this past week called it's either the contemplative pastor or contemplative pastor. I'm not quite sure where the emphasis would be in that word. But he writes about prayer, and the broader conversation was he writes about it. This says prayer's in the middle voice. So in the ancient Greek language, there was active, middle, and passive voice. And his whole conception of prayer was in the middle voice. It's not this active thing that we do, and it's not this passive thing we relinquish, but we, in a sense, are in this middle space when we pray, that we render control unto God. We don't manipulate the situation, but we're also not just kind of passively offloading it so we can forget about it. We, by the grace of God, are able to sort of jump into that river and participate in what God's already been doing. We're not prompting God to do anything. God himself is already moving in our lives in so many ways that we can't even comprehend. And when we submit ourselves to the Lord, we aren't just rendering over control, or we aren't trying to steer that river. We are just jumping in and joining with what he's already been doing.
Can't argue with Eugene.
No, you can't. It's in the Bible. You can't. Yeah.
So it shouldn't come to a surprise to many, but it might. People that speak at churches regularly have kind of a bag, if you will, of sermons to kind of pull out when they go visit a new church and guest speak, or if they're starting off. Like for you, Ryan, you're not moved into your new house yet. You're living somewhere else until you get up here. Was this a message that you had been crafting over, the past couple of years? I know in your sermon itself, you mentioned stuff that happened a year ago. Yeah. Was this a message that you have kind of been fine-tuning, crafting over time? Or was this a message that you wrote specifically right here for Arbor? Because obviously it's not a wrong answer to say this is actually something I've been working on for a while, and just it's very relevant to Arbor, so let's share it. Is this something that you've been working on for a while?
No, I've been processing it for the last maybe month and a half.
Okay.
But that's the first time I ever preached that message.
Wow, that's awesome.
Wanted to just start our season together with something new and something fresh. And so, that was a first timer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
So.
What was that process like? You said month and a half, so a month and a half would still put you in Michigan. Was it and obviously it can be more than one answer, but was it a burdensome leaving Michigan and that life, or was it anticipatory of, I can't wait to get out to Woodinville and share this?
It was both and.
Yeah.
For sure. Leaving Michigan was really hard, but some of the best advice we got was don't neglect the hard goodbyes. Make sure that you take time with those people who mean so much to you, to say the hard goodbyes, feel all the feels, and experience that. And I do not regret that for a second. That was really sound and solid advice. So we were still very much wrestling with okay, we're leaving this place. And there was as difficult as the past year had been, there was a lot of simplicity and security with the area where we lived. There was a lot about life that we had established and patterns that we knew over the last 7 years, where it was like, we could stay here. We could try to figure it out and make it work. But on the flip side, there was also a sense where it's like, we absolutely cannot, because God is stirring up something new in our heart. And we felt like this was absolutely where God was leading us, our family. And so there was also this level of excitement. And that in-between space is, not the funnest spot, because it's just emotionally exhausting. Because you have one foot over here, you have another foot over here, and we feel like slowly over time, though, that's transitioning and changing, and we hope here in the next few weeks that from a practical standpoint that'll be over, and then hopefully in the next few months, kind of from an emotional standpoint, that'll be done.
One thing I didn't realize till you said it from the pulpit was that it was a year to the date of a significant anniversary milestone in your journey. Do you want to tell us just whatever you want to tell us about that? Because I felt it was significant to start something new on a day where something had ended.
Yeah, it was, it's one of those things where you could only say, only God could orchestrate that. Because it does feel like so highly, highly coincidental. Because it was a Saturday, right? And so like the years changed, and so the 31st on a Saturday becomes the 31st on a, so it was the 31st July, and it was really at the tail end of a lot of very difficult conversations in a very difficult season, where we had just come at an impasse with our previous church. And that Saturday morning, I was sent a text, and they said, "Hey, Ryan, we'd like to meet to discuss your future. Do you want to do that tonight, or do you want to wait?" I had a study tour planned of Turkey for the following couple weeks. Do you want to wait till the end of that trip to discuss? And I said, "Oh no, absolutely not. We will connect tonight about this." And we met, and that meeting lasted all of about 5 minutes, and that was the end. That was the end for me. And so to then see how God, in a sense, redemptively brought that full circle.
I don't think it was accidental, do you?
Because
a year anniversary, to have something else fall on that exact same day reminds me of his faithfulness, that he's like, none of this was accidental. This is intentional. I want you to know I'm faithful. And I showed up for you. I'm sure there are many times in that year that you thought, this is not going well. I don't know where we're going.
Yeah, to give you a brief snapshot of where I had gone, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, in God's mercy, the days after that kind of fateful night, my tour for Turkey left, so I went on this trip, and that was so healing because I met just some really incredible people and some pastors. I went by myself. It was just me and some other pastors and people at a church in Grand Rapids, and met some really incredible people there. And they ministered to me all in different ways, like just so many different conversations on different hikes of ancient sites. And so my heart was just really full after that. I was just so blessed by that experience. And at the same time, Carrie and the kids came out here to spend time with her parents. And so we kind of had that time to just let it percolate a little bit inside of us without having to kind of be around each other and discuss it. But I got home like a day or two before Carrie, and I just remember being in my office in Michigan, and it was like the ugly crying tears that you do when you're just like, it all of a sudden just hits you in a wave, and you don't have any words. You're just crying. And so, there were just some really, really seasons of sadness because there was so much loss that was involved in all of that.
And you have to grieve that and feel it and deal with it, and then still move towards something else.
Yeah.
And there's a blend of all of the things as you're doing that.
Yeah.
So I love that yesterday or on the 31st was a reminder, like, Ryan, I've got you, right? That God's brought you here, and he's starting this new work, and probably blowing past your expectations of what you could do in a year or where you could go. Yeah. I mean, because look at us. Like, who would have imagined?
Yeah. I would have never imagined it. Exactly. Yeah.
This is your testimony.
Yeah.
So,
Obviously, you're an expert on your story and experiences. But do you feel like the Spirit put some people from Arbor, whether it's staff, elders, people that you talked to during the interview process, or even congregants you've met, that kind of informed you on our side of the story when you got up to share that message yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, I would say from the very beginning, my time with the search committee and different individuals who interviewed me in that process and shared bits of the story there, to, I think most importantly, our time together that first week of April. And I think that's when we really just kind of said, hey, here's who I am, here's who we are, being able to kind of fully understand the story. I think that's a lot of what the Lord used to compel us to come out here, was how aligned our stories seemed to be. And hopefully, it was going to be a situation where the Lord would use it for growth and healing for all of us.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say there's any like particular conversation or person. It was just kind of over time through those initial Zoom interviews with the search committee, but then especially I think solidified in that week here. There was just a lot of, yes, this is where we need to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think you said aligned, but I almost feel like with your guys' story and our story as a church, it's, almost those two puzzle pieces going aligned because they are coming together because they're not, we don't have the same story, the plants and the Arbor, but they're similar church hurts, right? And I feel like what's cool about it is you guys have a different side of that hurt and we have a different side of that hurt. And there's a little bit of connective tissue there in the stories, but both offer unique perspectives and can, some empathy and sympathy can be placed there. So
yeah, and that's not even to mention all the other interpersonal and personal hurts that we all bring to the table.
Exactly.
I think what is unique about it is very recent, significant hurt that both sides have gone through that I think the Lord's going to use to minister to us and to the whole church body and to the surrounding area in a very unique way. I mean, the reason why we have this great high priest who can sympathize with us because he's understood our weakness. I think this is the very thing the Lord has kind of walked us all through together so that we would be able to truly accomplish our mission as a church, which is not simply to help helping people find and follow Jesus. I think there's that special caveat that there's a special attention on those who are hurting, those who are lost, those who are alone. That's something that you can only do if you can only do well if it's a road that you're well familiar with.
Yeah, I when you had told us staff where you were planning on going for this first message, I think in the back of my head I was like, oh, he's probably going to go for like a heater, just a fastball, and then you come with this off-speed pitch of suffering, right, and despair and. Obviously, Spirit prompted you, and you have enough knowledge to know that's what we needed to hear, and we got to hear so much of that yesterday. That was the message that this group needed to hear. Typically, when a new pastor comes in, it's like, here's the great expectations. Here's where we're going. This is what you need to look forward to. And there was enough understanding of context there of like that was probably the best message for this context for both Arbor, the congregation, but also what you have to offer to the congregation. So I think it was just an amazing message to be shared with us. But I want to know, because I am the person that puts together slides, right, at the church for Sunday morning, and I got to see your manuscript, and it was like the most unique manuscript that I've seen in terms of people that have came through and preached here. I just kind of want to know, what's your process like when you sit down and you're obviously on this one, you had more time to prepare than most of your sermons will be week to week. What's your process like when you figure out, here's what I'm preaching on, here's where I'm going? What does that look like for you? Like let's just say from a Sunday to Sunday kind of preparation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to always preach from a text. I like to ensure that the message being taught is the message of God's word. I think that's where the power lies. I think the Spirit uses that. And so I spend a lot of time with the text, and I will read it, and read it and read it and read it. I create a note on my computer and I break down the verses and just kind of write impressions. And as I pray over that, just that the Spirit kind of leads and insights and thoughts, and write all that down. And then I will maybe read a commentary or two, write those notes down. And then, as the mind's kind of percolating around on the idea, if there are stories or thoughts or ideas, sometimes they just kind of come to mind. Sometimes I'll just go like a Google rabbit trail and like kind of read about different things and see perhaps how those kind of thoughts or insights. Maybe there's something I've read previously that I have in my notes that I'll want to like pull in and incorporate. For this one in particular, I have notes for all the books I've read, over the last few years. And so I'll just type in suffering and I'll look through different quotes that I've highlighted already previously on suffering.
Where do you store those?
You want to get in the nitty gritty?
I want to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I use a program called Notion.
Okay.
And I like paper books, but I read everything on a Kindle Paperwhite, and I'll highlight on the Kindle Paperwhite. And there's a program called Readwise that will import all my highlights into Notion, so that I can search everything I've read that I found interesting, so that it's available for things like that. So that's like the nitty gritty as to how I kind of am able to access all that stuff. And then I'll have like this like kind of I don't know, cloud of stuff, right? And it's just sort of in this like formless thing. And then I usually need like interpersonal discussion or a whiteboard or both. And that's when things get more tangible and kind of crystallize around an idea or a set of ideas. I don't kind of go for like a bullet, like 1, 2, 3 alliterated points kind of thing, like kind of whatever the thing needs to be. I just want to give it the freedom to do that. And then finally for me, I have to like write it all out. So not everyone is like this. There are some people who are tremendously gifted extemporaneous thinkers and speakers. For me, in order to think clearly, I have to write it out clearly. And so I'll do that. And I'll usually like articulate it. So if you ever walk by my office while I'm working on my sermon, you'll see me just like talking to myself because I need to hear it out loud. And then I'll put it on the paper, and then I'll just reread it and redo it. And a lot of what I end up saying is stuff that as I've prayed through and prepared was on that page, but it can go different directions and deviate at times.
Did anything pop in on Sunday that you hadn't written down that you felt in the moment that needed to be said?
I would say at the end, and the end is usually when a lot of it just kind of becomes its own thing. There were some things that I did want to say regarding what pressing forward in trust would look like, but what came out was completely different, and I can't really remember what came out. But whatever came out at the end was like not what I'd originally written or prepared for at all. So
when that happens.
I've gotten to know Brian, Alison, and Cliff more by looking at their manuscripts and their notes, because like it's one thing for someone to talk and get to know them through their body language and all of that, but then to see their raw thought process put on a page, you're like, okay, I feel like I'm getting to know you more. And I saw your notes that you sent me, and I'm like, I thought I had Ryan pegged a little bit, and then I saw your notes, and I was like, all right,
I've heard
some learning.
I heard chatter in the hall about his notes too.
But one of the things we like to do on the podcast on a weekly basis is hopefully people come in, they're moved by the word and an idea that maybe hit them. And if they're listening to this, hopefully it's because they heard the message and they liked it, or it spoke to them. And I'm feeling a little challenged right now because one of the main points of your sermon was getting away from a dependency on ourselves, right? And one of the things I like to ask the speaker is application. What can we do after hearing that message? And even just saying that sentence, what can we do? Is a little countercultural to, or intuitive to what you had said. So I guess if I'm somebody who really identified, like I heard what you were saying, I do rely on myself too much, or I do when I have these moments of despair, I go into fix-it mode. What would be something that you would say to them application-wise, or a tangible step that they can move forward in after hearing your message yesterday?
Yeah, I would say find an avenue to pray in a way that you haven't prayed before. And that could look different for different people. I think for some people, perhaps the challenge is find someone that you trust, that you maybe go to Arbor with, and find time to pray with that person. We pray every Wednesday here at 10:30 with the prayer team, and my heart, I've only been here for a few weeks and I've only been able to go to one, but when I was touring Arbor that first week of April, I just kind of like happened upon the meeting and got prayed for, and I was like, whoa, what just happened? It was such a blessing. And so there's just something that happens when we pray with other people. When husbands and wives pray together, when roommates pray together, when we pray with our children, I think I don't know, for lack of a better term, I think it moves the needle of faith in a different direction. I think there's a sense in which kind of what happens in our own interior world becomes a little bit more real or expressed. And so the dependence I feel on God when I pray alone, again, this might not be a universal truth for everyone, but this is an experience that I've had, that when I pray with other people and I hear other people's hearts toward the Lord and I'm able to express my heart in front of it. I know some people that probably, they're like, heck no, that freaks me out. I never want to do that. But I think that perhaps for some people, that's a good next step for them.
Okay. I had heard the P word, the prayer word, as your application towards the end. You were encouraging us in these different circumstances, and the answer was pray and pray and pray, so praying alone or praying together with someone would be a great outcome. And I think, how did Paul phrase it in the scripture? It was, he was like thanking the people for praying for them, right? That it had served, he had seen a difference because of it.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. He said, as you join us in prayer, I think it was, as you see it in the flow of thought, it appears to be the sense like directly connected to you've been suffering, and it's so that you would not depend on us, but you depend on God. And in your dependence on God, as you pray, right, then many will see the goodness of God poured out amidst our uncertainty and suffering. Right, that's the blessing there.
Wow.
Good stuff.
Well, we're getting close to the half-hour mark, so unless there's anything else you guys, been holding on to that you want to share, I'm going to wrap things up. But speak now or forever hold your peace.
Alison, you have anything else?
I just was going to say, what a beautiful, wonderful, exciting way to start a new chapter with a new pastor.
Yeah.
Somebody who preached a message of humility and dependence on God. I'm like, yes, high five. Yeah. Yes, more of that. Yes, please. So I loved it.
Yeah, next week is the 10-part bullet plan of everything we're going to do. So.
Right. Yeah.
Your 95 theses.
Do you want to preview for coming attractions at all?
Yeah.
What's down the pike?
Yeah. Ryan, if you feel comfortable, any peeling back of the curtain of what you might have going this next week?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the next 2 weeks, and then we have a break for our service Sunday, and the 2 weeks after that, we're going to look at a few snapshots in the Sermon on the Mount. I think we are cleverly calling it the Summer on the Mount.
Yes.
And so, what's so beautiful about the Sermon on the Mount is I really do think that it's sort of kind of Jesus' great manifesto, his sermon as to what a kingdom people look like.
Yeah.
And I think in the 21st century, in our day and age right now, we need that kind of kingdom people in this world. It doesn't mean that we are not going to encounter conflict or address conflict. It doesn't mean that we are a passive group who simply dwells within this room. I think there are some very pointed words that Jesus has for his people that are just as applicable for the church in America in the 21st century as it was 2,000 years ago, the first time he gave that sermon. And so I'm hopeful that it will encourage us and give us some hope and guidance to be the people of God in our day and age when the people of God are just as divided as every other tribe in this country.
Bring it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for sitting down, chatting about the message, chatting about Arbor. And thank you to all the listeners or watchers. And we will see you guys next week.
Yeah. See you next week.